You want to record? Oh, there we go. Cool.
Do you want me to put the prayers up now,
Oh, yeah.
Scott?
Yeah, we can start. Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for that. Yeah, we could start with the chants. Thanks, John. Okay. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct. Sugata nor of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct. Sugata nor of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata no of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. Saji Poki Junshi Mito Chang Rira Lingji Nide Kimpati Sangye Jindu Mite War Ye Jokun Damda Jina Chipar Sho. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure realm. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niratayami. Sangye Chodon Soigi Chonama Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyamsoji. Dagi Chunyengi Pe Sonamgi Chola Penjir Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chudang Sogi Chonama Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyamsoji Dagi Chunyengi Pe Sonamgi Chola Penshir Sangye Drupar Sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, and so especially we're going to dedicate, so we can kind of motivate for this, of course, for the awakening of ourselves in order to help to awaken all beings. So there's mainly a bodhicitta motivation, but also we can recite with the attitude that the sufferings of particular beings can be relieved in particular fires in Taos, any other kinds of wars, major events going on right now, anything you can think of you want to bring into your mind, and we can recite that these words of the Buddha and his disciples coming out of their realized enlightened minds, that these words aren't just words, they actually, we consider these words the words of the Buddha. So even though it's a conversation happening via the Buddha, right? Not directly the Buddha speaking. And so in that way, they're blessed, they have a lot of power. And so we can use that power with our motivation to help remedy situations that might need it. So with that in mind, we'll recite in English. And If you can kind of meditate on the words a little bit or contemplate the words as you're reciting, it's great. I prostrate to the Arya triple gem. This did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's Mountain in Rajgriha together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, and without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There's no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Taya taung gate gate paragate parasam gate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoke, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Okay. So with that, we can just take a second to generate bodhicitta motivation in a more direct way. And I'm going to do this a little bit differently tonight. And so first, we're just going to reflect a little bit on our situation, our life situation in the moment, whether we're feeling happy, sad, worried, confused, just calm and okay, whatever the experience, just reflecting on our human life for a moment. Of course, we have this perfect human rebirth, but I mean the nature of this human life, the nature of having freedom sometimes and not having freedom sometimes, the nature of the emotions going up and down, the nature of intrusive thoughts, circumstances we can't control, like fires, like stock markets, old age, getting sick, all of the ups and downs of life. And underneath all that, underneath that perception and how we relate to these experiences and how we internalize them and habits form around them and reactions come out. Under all that, we have to remember we have the ability to remove the afflictions. We have the ability to remove the suffering. And we can start with something very practical in this reflection, just a sense of change or impermanence. So the mood we were in yesterday is not the mood of today. A difficult moment in our life in the past is not the same as the present. And this includes both moments of happiness and suffering. So either way, we can see that things are changeable if we wait. As time moves, things shift. And this is one hint. Reality, or the nature of reality, is showing us that afflictions are removable, meaning they change. And what do I mean by afflictions? I mean, of course, the 5 main afflictions: clinging, ignorance, aversion, pride, jealousy. But I just mean the mind that's caught up. We talked about this last time. The predicament of confusion, the predicament of not knowing always what the right thing to do is. Where happiness, or we could say your genuine happiness, comes from, not fleeting happiness. And that predicament is removable. And that removability is what we call our Buddha nature, because it's not part of that Buddha nature. Just as dirt caked on a window over years of neglect, not being cleaned, dirt caked on that window will never ever be the window. It never was, and it never will be. So the window, in fact, was never ever dirty. But it can have the illusion of accumulating dirt. And so it's that illusion that we remove through these teachings on emptiness, through the practice of emptiness, through studying, contemplating, meditating on it. So we have to have some conviction in that, even if it's just a little bit of a belief at the moment, or just sort of like an inference, basically, that, okay, things can change. Things are impermanent. They're not as they appear. And so we can infer that afflictions are removable, even though we know that's not our daily experience for the most part. And therefore, afflictions are removable in the minds of all beings, as they also have Buddha nature. That is the essence of their mind. And so when we develop the mind of relative bodhicitta here for the teaching, it's connected not to this attitude of hierarchy or competition of, getting enlightened first to rescue the most sentient beings. It's more based on this recognition, even if it's just an idea for the moment, that ourselves and all beings have Buddha nature. And it's not just an object. This is the essence of our being. We essentially are a window that's not soiled by the afflictive emotions. Yet afflictive emotions arise, and we have to work with them through the Dharma. So knowing this is really helpful, because we can develop the mind of awakening based on this. And it doesn't become some abstract thing. It becomes, okay, this is possible for me. This is possible for other beings. And so when we pledge, in the refuge and bodhicitta chant, I want to, through these teachings, may I through contemplating them, through studying, through meditating, may I attain awakening for the benefit of all beings. This is what it means. To become more in touch with our own Buddha nature, to become a reflection of the Buddha nature of others. We're just merely reflecting their own Buddha nature back to them. The more we attune to it, to use kind of a little bit more new agey terms. But I like that, for me, that's very straightforward. Like the more my Buddha nature uncovers, the more others can see their own Buddha nature, because we're reflecting to each other the Buddha nature. And that's simply what an enlightened being does. So when we set that motivation for why we're here tonight, it can come from really like a profundity, trusting that nature, but also knowing that, like a window with dirt caked on it, it can be hidden from us. So we have to do some digging. And that's what we're doing here. So all of those words, just let them sink into your heart for a moment. We can let go of the concepts I was talking about and just let it sink in. See if you could feel a sense of that based in love and compassion, based in altruism, like a wanting, a need to remedy this for oneself. Okay. Thanks very much. And so from last week, would you all, maybe we could take a quick vote. What would be more helpful to you all is I can do a quick review of last week, or we can just go straight into some practice time for 5 or 10 minutes. What do you feel like? And I know that's maybe we can raise our hands. Who wants to practice now? Who would prefer a little bit of a recap first? Okay, I think the practice one. Hold on one second. So just to kick off the practice, you can kind of just settle into your body, find a posture that is upright, alert. So we make sure we stay awake during the practice. Just take a moment to drop into yourself. And close your eyes if you want. You can leave them open, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can connect with your breath if you like. So there's a sense of just coming into a sense of nowness. So use the breath or whatever you're used to for your shamatha practice, just to allow the mind to just settle into the moment. Don't try to concentrate, just allow awareness to come out. Connect with awareness and connect with a sense of nowness. And if the breath helps with that, great. Or if anything else helps with that, great. Just having settled for a short moment, feel free to allow your gaze to rest half open or fully open if you'd like. And if you want to close your eyes, that's fine too, as long as you're able to stay alert. So we're going to continue the practice we worked with, this practice of interdependence, using interdependence as a gateway to experiencing emptiness and practicing Chegom and Jokom, or reflective meditation, analytical meditation, and then resting meditation. We're going to alternate those for the next 5 or 10 minutes. So just use the awareness now to kind of look back at your experience. So we're going to continue with the experience of form. Form here meaning the body. And to break it down, you can just take one part of the body if you want, like a foot, a toe, a hand, a finger. And we're going to analyze a little bit our relationship to that part of the body as self, as being held within a sense of I, me, and mine. So these 3 categories are really important because sometimes things appear as me, like there's a sense of me-ness, like my foot, sense of I, or a sense of mine. This foot is mine, this hand is mine. So there's many ways to do this meditation. Sometimes we take it apart, but here we're going to just reflect on its interdependence. So just again, isolate one part of the body. Maybe I'll talk about the foot just because it's easier to keep one's thread going or string going. And so just, you're not directly looking at the foot, you're reflecting, contemplating, analyzing the sense of your foot. Of course, included in there can be sensation, but really just the form. Of course, maybe impressions of whether you like your foot or don't like your foot will come into the mind. That's fine. Just notice those. Notice how your relationship to your foot is happening. This is all about turning the awareness we use in shamatha, but turning it into insight with a sense of curiosity. And so there's a sense of watchfulness, watching our experience of the foot. We have all kinds of ideas, maybe no ideas. That's also relational. Nothing, like meaning not much, is also a relationship. I don't have much of a relationship, so the relationship is not much. That is the relationship in the moment. Or, like I said, a relationship that categorizes as something pleasing or unpleasing. And of course, it's connected to our body. It's connected to our sense of self within the body. But using interdependence, we can see there's many factors here. The foot, obviously, as just an object of form, is connected to toes and nails, hairs, bone, blood. And then where does the foot end and the calf begin? This is where it gets really interesting. So your sense of self within the foot and calf, I mean, if you say, okay, well, maybe I'm not my foot because it has bones and blood and all these things that we can break down further into atoms. And you really have to look for yourself there. But when you don't find yourself, well, where's the foot end? And where's the calf begin? So again, relationship. Just looking at that relationship with the mind. So you're just looking at it. And then we rest. And I'm not going to give, you can rest whenever you want. And rest means maybe you're going to look for a second. You're going to kind of analyze. Looking here means analyze. And then when a little bit of space opens up, just rest in that space. And if no space opens up, totally fine. Just take a rest for a moment, come back to shamatha. So within this relationality, which is another way to talk about interdependence, interdependence points to many parts, many conditions. The foot dependent upon the toes, dependent upon the bones and blood, dependent upon the calf to be a foot, right? Something it's connected to. Or we could say our foot is dependent upon our calf. So this label our or mine, right? Or me. And I just want you to continue to look at this relationship now involving the mind, the perception. So of course, with our eyes, we can look at the foot and calf, but now we're analyzing it. So where is calf appearing? Is it appearing in the mind? Sorry, where is the foot appearing? Is it appearing in the mind? Or is it appearing outside the mind? So where's the relationship there? Or is it a combination of both? So we're just asking some questions. Again, don't ask the conceptual mind. Your conceptual mind is probably going to have some smart answer, but that's not going to get you closer to experiencing emptiness. Look and just take a break. Like you look and just hang back for a second as you're looking. So you ask a question, analyze a little bit, rest. Ask a question, analyze a little bit, rest. So I'll just leave some space now for you to kind of take some of those ideas and play with them. You can just play with one of those questions. You don't even have to ask all of them. I love this question of what's in and outside the mind. So there's the sense of my foot. I can feel it. I can touch it. It hurts if I poke it with a pin. It can experience all kinds of sensations, but where is this sense of a truly existent foot? And again, where's a sense of me within that? Because it's dependent upon all these other factors. So which factor is it? And then all together, it's also just representing a collage of its dependence, including the mind, thoughts. So just take a moment to play with some of those reflections, and then again, rest in shamatha or rest in not finding. Not finding can feel sometimes like a little bit of spaciousness opens up. Or just literally not finding, and you kind of stay with that. So leave a lot of space here. You know, there's a sense of curiosity, investigation, but let go of expectations. We're not in a rush. I mean, we'll close the practice in a few minutes, but generally, just leave some sense of spaciousness. And if it's hard to have spaciousness or not being in a rush, you can go back to shamatha for a little while. That's also fine. Then come back. Look. And so what we can start to do now is apply this to the entire body. if for, if in some way, in a non-painful way that doesn't affect our life, we could kind of remove our foot and put it somewhere on a shelf, we have to reflect. Does that mean does that mean self moves to the shelf? That's suddenly there's two selves? Nobody feels that, right? So why do we feel that now? And so moving up the body, again, like where does the foot end and the rest of the body begin? But the same reflection we can apply. Of course, when we look for self within any of our parts within the aggregate of form, the eyes, the ears, we don't find any kind of independent existence to the body, but we also don't find an independent self within the body. So we can move on to the other aggregates of mind eventually, but first we started with the aggregate of body because it's very relatable, it's obvious. And of course, a lot of us have different relationships with our body. Sometimes a lot of attachment to the body, sometimes a lot of aversion, sometimes mix of both. So we can see the afflictive emotions also arise based on an illusion. Because now we can see the body is not independent and truly existing. But it also appears. So now we're gonna go a little further. We'll do more on this later when we do a practice with these with part of the Heart Sutra. But does that mean the body doesn't exist? Or does that mean, we're not experiencing the body in some kind of way? No, obviously no. We can experience the wall, right? And we can see it, but that we don't experience the wall as body. We don't sense through the wall. What do we sense through our body? So I want you to look at this for a moment before we close the meditation. We'll do more on that later. But there's something that appears. But when we look, can you find any kind of sense of independent body or independent foot or any independent part of the body? If you take the body as a whole, it's also connected to non-body, meaning like it's in relationship to more things outside of the body, mind, chairs or furniture in the room. So everything is in relationship. And we can see because it's in relationship, it doesn't have any kind of independent true existence. And that's where we can rest our mind for a moment in the practice, getting some space. So just right before we close, just coming to a sense of shamatha one more time. Just resting the mind in a sense of nowness, back to the breath if you'd like, or just resting in a sense of awareness and nowness. That's fine. Okay. Thank you all very much. So how did that go? How was the practice for you? And good or bad is not an answer. It has to be more like good and because of this happened, or this happened, or bad because this happened. I don't care if either way is fine, but more than good.
I'll start with good. Good. I felt like it was it took some pressure off. I don't know how else to explain it. It just kind of took pressure off being this human and feeling more open, I guess, or expansive, connected to everything, which is why it took the pressure off, I guess. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it. There's no good words, but
No, it's better if it comes out kind of like that. You don't have to try to form it so much. That's great. Yeah.
yeah, I just felt like the pressure was off. I used my heart instead of my foot, and that was really good. Initially, it felt, like you feel the heart, and there's all sorts of stuff going on in the world, and so your heart aches. And while doing the meditation, it felt like there was less ache because it was sort of a connection with everything, which for me was comforting, I guess, in a way. I mean, comforting is not a good word, but that's what I felt.
Cool. Perfect. I won't comment too much. I just want to hear different people's, what's coming up for everyone. Thanks for being the first to share.
For me, I get antsy with these meditations because in my head, when we go through, is the foot me, is the hand me, so I'm good with all of that until we get to the closer to where I perceive me.
Yeah.
So I start going through if I took my foot off, would there still be me as I perceive it? Yes. Take the arms off. Yes. So even though intellectually I know that me is not here or here, that's where things start to get tough. So I'm okay with, yep, I don't have arms, I don't have legs, I'm still me. But then it gets very hard when we get to the mind and the heart, because then I really have a hard time separating me from the parts, or what parts can be gone. And that's where to me, that's where the meat is of where I need to, where I get stuck.
Yeah. Good. I'm not gonna say too much, but
Okay.
maybe if you want me to, but great. No, great. But this is good because I really want your honest experience, because, I think the hardest thing sometimes for some of us is being really honest in the meditation. It's hard for me, like with myself. So it's really good if we can be honest where we're stuck, what's opening. It's really good. Anyone else want to share?
Well, Jana, kind of from what you were saying, I have this vision of a bowl of vegetable soup, and all the parts are just parts of the vegetable soup, including the mind. And when the mind becomes just one of the vegetables, it really helps me to lower the ego part of mind. It's just one of the freaking ingredients. Doesn't own the bowl of soup. The bowl of soup doesn't exist because of it. Mm-hmm. This bowl of soup is no more delicious or nutritious than anybody else's bowl of soup. And it's a way that I've learned to just diminish the importance of the me in this bowl of soup.
Cool. I like your analogy. Maybe one more if you all want. If no, we can move on.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
That part where you talked about, your mind is, I don't know what you said exactly, but your mind is thinking about your foot or whatever, and my mind was thinking about the heart. And then you said, where is that? I don't know how you said it. Maybe you remember, but you were saying something about where is that heart or where is that foot? And then just rest in that. thing. I really just wanted to say I really like that. I just was like, oh, where, oh, where? And then I was like, okay, just rest in that. There was a minute, there was a second of search, and then it was just, oh, and then it was just, and so I get it from the last week. You were talking about that resting moment, and it doesn't fit into the category of analytical or the calm abiding. It's kind of like an in-between moment, which was really good. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. No, I'm glad you connected with that. And you know, and that has different flavors, that type of resting meditation, because sometimes it has a lot of insight, like in it. There's sort of a sense of really seeing the I is not truly existent, you know, and we can't find an I within the body, but it appears, right? Like there's still a sense of appearance. And so, how to put it? So that resting is kind of a way, I think of it as a way to kind of like, because what I used to do is, I think I said it last time, I used to just analyze, and you end up just staying very much in your conceptual head with this stuff. I think this is one of the difficulties in meditating on emptiness, because when we study and read a lot of books on emptiness or receive teachings on it, we kind of get very heady about the whole thing. And to me, emptiness is not that heady, actually. I mean, well, definitely emptiness as emptiness, like the phenomena of emptiness, is not heady, but not that it's an outward object, but the practice, I don't think, has to be so heady either. And sometimes we just need a few little things. So like, you know, for instance, like when we study something like Nagarjuna, or, you know, there's a lot of different kinds of analytical meditations we can do, but we can just take one, you know, and just kind of work in one question. And I think relaxing into that is sometimes the hardest part, because we think we have to get something, right? But emptiness is getting nothing, but that nothing is not nothing. So it's like, it's a weird experience, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's not nothing, but it's also not something. So then we need some method to be able to sit in that not something, but not nothing, right? And that's where the resting comes in, because it reinforces what we don't see, but also doesn't mean it does not exist, right? So this is kind of the tricky thing. So, but yeah, you can play with that. That was just like a very rough idea of one way to meditate.
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. And we'll do some more in the end, I hope, if we have time. Cool. Let me just pull up some notes. Just one sec. Okay. So I'm just going to do a really, really quick review. I think mostly last time I spent quite a bit on the introduction, you know, and just reminding us that, you know, this longing to be free, I think, is really, you know, connected to bodhicitta. Is really the main thing we need for meditation on emptiness. Of course, that's connected to renunciation mind, relative bodhicitta, but there's a sense of like, I don't know about you all, but like for me, Buddhism, what I'm so interested in it about, and what's kept me interested for so many years, is that it really has the spirit of finding what's truth, you know, like finding like what actually is going on here, right? And of course, within that, the relief of suffering, the growth of compassion, like all those beautiful things too. But there's really this sense of like longing for truth. And the minute you connect that to things like refuge, you connect that to things like bodhicitta, the whole path starts to make sense. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Yeah, otherwise it can feel very much just like another belief system. You know, of course, Buddhism has beliefs, but Buddhism has beliefs that help you to go beyond belief. That's what we're really doing here, you know? And these emptiness teachings, or the Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom teachings and practices, are really to go beyond belief. But beyond belief means beyond concept. It means beyond dualistic concept. And every lineage agrees on that, more or less. You know, Mahayana lineage agrees on that. They have some different ideas of, you know, how to get there, but they all agree on that. We have to go beyond concept. So here we're using concept to go beyond concept. So it's this weird, you know, issue where quoted in the Lam Rim, but it's actually a quote from a sutra where it's like, this kind of insight meditation is like rubbing, analytical meditation is like rubbing two sticks together. And if you rub them long enough and, with a lot of perseverance, they're going to catch fire. And what happens when two sticks catch fire? They both get consumed. And consumed here means we're able to rest in the nature. We're able to rest in the nature of emptiness, right? So that kind of motivation is really what we need, I think, to persevere in these teachings. Otherwise, like I said, they just become very heady and very like a lot of just jargon, right? Because I'm going to use some jargon tonight, but the jargon should point us in a direction, not just be words. So in Q&A, we can dive in if we need to. So I kind of defined what is Prajnaparamita, but I really like this definition of the wisdom gone beyond. And so, what are we going beyond, right? Because like, go beyond what? Go beyond concept, go beyond dualistic clinging, right? Because we're not going somewhere else, right? From, I'm a little careful not to bring in Vajrayana teachings to Mahayana teachings, but just briefly, just as a reflection, from a Vajrayana perspective, we're already in a Buddha realm. We don't have to go anywhere. It's already a Buddha realm. We just don't see it, I see a chair and a wall and an iPad. So this is kind of like something like that. Obviously, it's not within our practical experience, but it's something to reflect on. I like that a lot. So this wisdom gone beyond, like I said, is mostly taught through the Prajnaparamita sutras, right? Which there's a large variety of, as I pointed out last time. Ones that are much longer, ones that are shorter, but they all really come to the same conclusions. Just some do that in a lot more detail. So kind of using the Heart Sutra as our base here, this has everything. It's just done in a very condensed form, right? And I think this is why it's so famous too, because it's chantable. There's no excuse why we can't recite this every day. Super easy, super fast. It's very powerful. For me, every time we get to those lines, no suffering, etc., I start to light up, right? I mean, because it's very powerful when we recite this with faith. So practicing the Prajnaparamita, I briefly mentioned this last time. And I don't mean to be like, kind of like, what's the word? Bratty with this. But actual Prajnaparamita is not practicable, right? Actual Prajnaparamita is the nature of how things are. So how could you practice the nature of how things, self and phenomena and everything is? It just is, right? And so you could kind of say like, but I like this. The reason I bring it up is it's useful to think about because, okay, if we can't actually practice it, what am I doing here? Well, somehow we got confused and therefore we need to do something to trigger the thing that's already there, right? To say it in another way, emptiness is not something we produce. It can never be produced. It's not a product of anything because it goes beyond the conditioned. But since we're stuck in a conditioned subject-object reality right now, conceptual reality, we have to do something to remember or do something to connect with it, right? And so then you do have Prajnaparamita as a path through these Perfection of Wisdom sutras, right? Through the Heart Sutra, through different kinds of meditations on emptiness. And I mentioned them last time, but basically some kind of analytical vipassana, some kind of, what do we call it? Like using analogies to see the view. Like sometimes we might reflect on the analogy of a dream or like an illusion or like a mirage in the desert. And some people can actually realize emptiness or get closer to emptiness via these kind of reflections. So it's less analytical, but it's a kind of reflection. So it's the second type. And then third type is directly connecting with emptiness through teachings that have methods going direct, right? So those are primarily in the Vajrayana traditions. So in the Mahayana, we rely a lot on analytical and of course, resting in what we don't find that I already pointed out, but mostly it's analytical and then analogies, right? And of course, this is backed up by study, understanding, and contemplation. So, you all tell me if I'm going in directions that are, what's the word? Not relatable to you, and I'll try to connect it more. But we have to be really patient with these kinds of ideas and teachings because they're not easily understandable. And so we kind of have to be very perseverant and patient, but also, like I said earlier, we have to let go of trying to kind of like put everything in a conceptual box. What we need is enough conceptual boxes to practice, in my opinion. This is my kind of humble, crappy opinion. Now, we need enough to be able to do that. And once that's going, we're good. And then, of course, the learning, the understanding is going to increase as we merge that with practice. So we need enough to know what we're doing. What are the mechanisms of the practice? We need enough to know what we're aiming towards. But if we're trying to like think into emptiness, we're never going to connect with it. Do you see what I'm saying? So analytical meditation is not thinking yourself into emptiness. It's like this again. It's using analysis to wear the conceptual mind out. That's primarily what analytical meditation is. We wear it out through rubbing. That's why, in general, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they use Vajrayana methods too, because the Vajrayana methods are quicker, because they're not rubbing, they're going more direct. But nonetheless, to prepare for Vajrayana methods of meditation on emptiness, it helps to do a little bit of this, at least. It prepares us a lot. That's why most monasteries, nunneries, practitioners study a lot of Madhyamaka, right? Getting ready for other kinds of practice. So emptiness, and we're primarily going to look at emptiness now through the Heart Sutra. But just to say a little bit, I think all you are pretty familiar, so this is probably going to be review. But in general, we have to have some sense of relative and absolute truth when we talk about emptiness. This is where Nagarjuna and others really brought out the specificities of some sort of structure that makes it easier for us to point in the right direction, right? Towards emptiness. So relative truth, we can say it in lots of different ways. You're going to hear it in a few different ways here. I like the definition. Basically, what appears is relative truth. What functions conventionally, right? And then you have absolute truth, which is the nature of what appears or functions. So we have function, appearance, and its nature. Now, from a Mahayana or a Madhyamaka perspective, these two things are not separate. They're actually the same thing. The problem is we've separated them. I don't think we came out of the womb and said, I'm going to separate relative and absolute truth. It's part of the samsaric experience. It's part of the mind getting confused. And so that confusion is based in separating these two truths. So the two truths are a great model, but what's really fun to think about is they're not actually two different things, as I'm pointing out, and I can point out further if you want. And they're not actually true in the sense that like there's a truth we can nail, right? Again, because what it's pointing to is some sense of how something arises, or we could use the word interdependence, how something's interdependent, how all things are interdependent. Yet when we look for them or it or I or that, we can't find it, right? So absolute truth is emptiness. It's what I'm just describing now. Absolute truth is that appearance is not findable. That phenomena is not findable in and of itself. Now, what do we mean by not findable? I can go into more detail here. Findability, what it implies generally from a Buddhist perspective, is for something to be findable or true. That's another word, just something that needs to be true. It has to exist permanently, independently, and in a singular way, right? So we're just kind of taking one of these, interdependence, because this is in Lama Tsongkhapa's 3 principal aspects of the path. He really just focuses on that. And it's enough, I think. And so, something has to be independent in order to be true. So what's the problem here? Is it that we believe conceptually that things are independent? As Buddhists probably know, because we've done enough study. But how do we act with things? When the shit hits the fan, how are we acting? You see what I'm saying? That's where it counts. And that's why we need to meditate and slowly draw out this nature of the absolute aspect of the relative. But the relative doesn't disappear. this is what's so interesting. This is what is this kind of magical illusion that many yogis and yoginis express when they realize emptiness. And so at first, what we're really working with here, just to make it very practical, we're working with the afflictive emotions. We're working with our reactions, how we think and feel about things, how we think and feel about our bodies, the emotions themselves, outer phenomena, all kinds of relationships. And so this is based in reaction. And that's what we call the emotional obscurations, right? So we have to start there. The cognitive obscurations don't start to, the bodhisattvas, when they're after the first bhumi, they're working to release themselves from the cognitive obscurations. So a simple way to talk about this is the afflictive obscurations are, generally what we're suffering from, which is that we believe what our emotions and thoughts tell us to be real, to be true most of the time. I'm not saying all the time. I know you guys are longtime practitioners, but, a lot of the time. And especially whenever, the stuff hits the fan, it comes out more, right? And this is part of our samsaric habituation. So when we're meditating on emptiness, in a very practical way, we're habituating to actually the nature rather than the confusion. And that's a really important recognition. We have to habituate more to that. Not because it's some other thing. It's naturally how things are, but we've moved away from that. That's part of the recognition of sort of samsaric experience. So we first have to have that recognition. So in the Kagyu tradition, they have a really nice phrase. They have this phrase that goes like this: mind, there is no mind. Mind is luminous. So again, mind is number one. Number two, there is no mind. And number three, mind is luminous. And in the Zen tradition, they have something very similar. I think it's in the Soto Zen tradition. Mountain, there is no mountain, then mountain. So it's very, very beautiful, more poetic. But anyways, I won't go into too much because I really want to stay within Lama Tsongkhapa's approach here. But I really want to talk about mind. So this is just the recognition of, we have to do enough meditation to see how the mind is working. Meaning like, okay, I'm perceiving through mind, right? And of course, I can perceive, I can't perceive, but I experience through the body too. But who is the owner, right? Is the body the owner of the mind, or is the mind the owner of the body? Like, who's in charge? Who's the boss? Who's the El Jefe? The mind or the body? So we have to do some meditation on that and some reflection. And if we do enough, we'll see, well, yeah, I mean, I think, and conceptually, I think most of us know it's the mind, but is that how we act? So we have to do the meditation to change the behavior. And once that happens, we can start to see how the mind's functioning and creating the samsara, right? And then we can slowly do the second step of meditating on emptiness, which gets to the conclusion, well, there's mind that perceives that as the boss, but where's the mind? So we look back at the mind. And again, this is more in Mahamudra teachings, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But then we find, well, mind's not nothing. There's, I can't find a perceiver, but there's still perception happening. So that's where the third comes in. But again, I'm just kind of saying this briefly. I'm not going to go a lot into detail there. So getting back to my point of relative and ultimate truth, we really have to play with this sense. Sorry, just one second. We really have to play with this sense of appearance and emptiness. Or if we don't like the word appearance, we can say interdependence and emptiness. So these two are a unity. And so we're going to get into that now. So I'd love to just focus on these verses in the Heart Sutra, which are probably the most famous verses. Maybe some of you have them memorized, I hope. But they're really like the heart of how we meditate here. And these verses are, if we refer to the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form is not other than emptiness. So if you got the Heart Sutra in front of you, or John, you don't have to put it up again because we'll lose picture, but form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form form is none other than emptiness. These are probably some of the four most important lines in Prajnaparamita as a whole, like the sutra tradition of Prajnaparamita. So there's a lot of different ways of working with this. I'm going to just go through kind of like a little more detail. I'm going to read some notes and then we'll go kind of more simple. So this is going to be a little longer, and then I'll simplify it. This is what we worked with in meditation, more or less. And this implies that what we recognize as form, we were working with the body, right? Foot, hand, whatever. So what we recognize as form comes to exist as a result of the aggregation of many causes and conditions. It doesn't come into fruition or appearance by its own means, right? So again, interdependence pointing to emptiness, right? And then, let's see. The second statement, emptiness is form, presents emptiness as arising. Sorry, I'm going to go back and revise that. So form is emptiness, presents the emptiness of the phenomenal world, thereby countering the extreme of sort of an absolute existence, the mistaken belief that all phenomena have an absolute reality, right? Because what we're seeing is that when we look at form, it appears in relationship. So we can't find any kind of permanent, independent, singular thing there. Or we could just say we can't find something that's independent. It appears as many parts interacting with each other, right? And then the second line, emptiness is form, presents emptiness as arising as dependent origination, thereby countering the extreme of nihilism. So again, this is what I was talking about with appearance. Again, relative ultimate. So the first one, it's pointing out absolute truth. Form is emptiness. And this applies not just to form, because the Heart Sutra then goes through all the other types of experience, right? The other aggregates, etc. So this is pointing out the absolute truth. Form is emptiness. The second is pointing out emptiness as form, in that it also appears. But how does it appear? It appears as interdependence, as relationality. It appears in relationship. So it's not nothing. So the first is really refuting the extreme of existence. The second is refuting the extreme of non-existence. And really, when you get down to the heart of Madhyamaka, this is what they're trying to get us to realize, these two things, which start to unify the two truths. Then the third and fourth statements get a little more in depth, because they're talking about what happens in our experience. So we could use the word realization, but we could just say a little bit more like the experience unfolding in a deeper way then happens in the third and fourth statements. So the third statement, emptiness is not other than form. This presents the union of appearance and emptiness, or the union of emptiness and dependent origination. So we first had, emptiness, then dependent origination or interdependence in the second line. And now we have the unity of the two, that they're starting to unify. So the more we meditate on emptiness, and that, well, emptiness doesn't necessarily then block that things can arise, right? It doesn't say nothing exists. It's not a voidness. So when we experience that, we start to then unify the two. So again, this third line is more talking about the experience of that. So it's nothing like we can sort of do, like just put ourselves into. We have to go through the first two first. And then the fourth, formed two is not other than emptiness. And this indicates that appearance and emptiness are not incompatible, abiding instead in a state of total unanimity. So this is really just reinforcing that inseparability is a word we use sometimes in Tibetan Buddhism.
Scott,
Yeah.
sorry, can you just say that again, that last one? What were you saying? That was so fast, I kind of lost it there.
Sorry, and I'm going to make it more simple. That's why I'm going a little faster, because I don't intend that you're going to catch all this. Just sort of, this is like detailed, and then we'll go more simple. But yeah, form two is not other than emptiness, would indicate that appearance and emptiness, they're not incompatible, right? They're not like two different things. Again, just asserting it in a different way. And so instead, these abide in a state of, the book here says unanimity, but I like inseparability. I like that word a little more. Emptiness and appearance are inseparable, or emptiness and dependent origination are inseparable. And we're going to go over this in a few more ways.
Okay. Thank you.
So, yeah, cool. So to put it in a really simple way, number one, form is emptiness. Appearance is established as empty, meaning we have to establish it through meditation. We have to establish that it's empty. But the words are pointing to that. The words are giving us a job. Go forth. Understand, meditate, experience. Appearance is established as empty. In this case, form is emptiness, right? So form is established as empty, but we can break that out to all appearance. Form is just one type of appearance. Number two, emptiness is affirmed as dependent origination. That dependent origination is the other side of the emptiness because it's not a nothingness, right? Number three, emptiness and appearance are affirmed as a unity, right? They're not two separate things. And then number four, this unity is affirmed. This is another way to say the fourth. The emptiness is, form is emptiness, form is not other form. Form is not other than emptiness. This unity is affirmed as transcending all concepts and forms of dualistic expression, right? That's another way. This is like a Sakya approach. That's why, so that would be one way of interpreting the fourth. So now I'm going to go into Lama Tsongkhapa, our tradition right here. We're steeping in. So really, what's interesting, I don't know why to me, one of my favorite texts of Lama Tsongkhapa is one of his shortest, which is the Lamsum, or the Three Principal Aspects of the Path. It's really profound. The whole you don't need much more than that. Actually, it's everything. It's just very brief. And I don't know why I was like, okay, I want to relate this what I just said. These four: appearance is established as empty, emptiness is affirmed as dependent origination, emptiness and appearance are affirmed as a unity, and this unity is beyond all conceptual expression or thought. I thought, let's see what Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Three Principal Aspects of the Path, and it turns out, I don't know if I just came across this or this is like a thing, because I don't remember any lamas teaching this specifically. It seems like Lama Tsongkhapa is pointing out these four aspects of the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness, in his verses on Vipassana, or insight meditation in the Three Principal Aspects of the Path. We'll see what you think. I might be stretching, but let's go for it and see what we think. So I forget what verse it is in his text, but it's I think the second verse, getting into the insight section of that text, that commentary. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, quote, "The one who sees that cause and effect operate infallibly for all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana, and for whom any objects of conceptual focus have subsided, has set out upon the path delighting all the Buddhas." Maybe I'll put this in the chat so you all don't have to stress about. Let me see if I can copy and paste this. Then you don't have to try to, I feel bad for your hands. Taking a lot of notes there. Okay, so this is, these are the four I pulled from Lama Tsongkhapa, Three Principal Aspects of the Path. So the first, the one who sees that cause and effect operate infallibly for all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana, and for whom any objects of conceptual focus have subsided, has set out upon the path delighting all the Buddhas. So really, it's the second part of that statement that points out form is emptiness. For whom any objects of conceptual focus, right? Be it a form, be it any kind of the aggregates, because we can open up this to mean not just form, but any type of appearance. Appearance here in Tibetan Nangwa just means anything that arises, thoughts, form, outer perception, inner perception, dreams, whatever. It's all part of that, all part of that relative truth. And so he's saying when those objects of conceptual focus have subsided, we've set out on the path delighting the Buddhas, meaning we've realized the absolute truth. Then second, he says, the knowledge that appearances arise unfailingly in dependence, and the knowledge that they are empty and beyond all assertions, As long as these two appear to you as separate, there can be no realization of the Buddha's wisdom. So again, emptiness is form. Just really emphasizing the knowledge that appearances arise unfailingly in dependence. They're not a nothingness. So it's interesting because the first one he's saying, for whom any objects of conceptual focus have subsided. So some people might go too far and think, well, that means everything's subsided, nothing's there. But then he says, no, that has to connect with emptiness as form, the knowledge that appearances arise unfailingly in dependence. And these two have to come together. Then in the third, he says, yet when they arise at once, this is where I was like, wow, because this is very much the third with form is emptiness form. Emptiness is not other than form. Yet when they arise at once, not each in turn, but both together, then through merely seeing unfailing dependent origination, certainty is born, and all modes of misapprehension fall apart. That is when the discernment of the view has reached perfection. So again, a lot here to go into. I know it's a lot, just bear with me. So I'm just going to pull a few things from it. We don't have to do the whole verse. So what this means is when for a practitioner, first we're developing this form as emptiness, but we have to make sure we don't fall into nihilism. So we have to develop also emptiness as form. That's how we know we have the right view, because we're not denying that because of interdependence, things arise, right? Things arise dependent, and we're experiencing that, yet we can't find it, right? I pointed that out earlier, just to make it more simple. That's the first two. But now he's saying when these arise together, not that sometimes we're in the absolute truth and sometimes we're relating to the dependent truth. When they arise together, he says, and then through merely seeing unfailing dependent origination, certainty is born, and all modes of misapprehension fall apart. That is when discernment of the view has reached perfection. So again, this is like stages of realization he's describing. If we look at it like that, it makes a lot more sense. The first one describing the entrance, the second one describing that entrance getting fuller, and the third describing the actual unification of the two truths starting to happen for a practitioner. So we have to look at this as, again, words that help point us in the right direction. Did you have something?
Yeah. Okay. So when he says certainty is born, does that mean that is like, gosh, I'm not good with words. Is that the realization of emptiness? I mean, certainty is born. Certainty just seems like an odd word, unless it means realization of emptiness. Is that?
Yeah, that's what it's referring to. And here certainty means like the certainty is going beyond a conceptual certainty.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it. Because it follows after that, and all modes of misapprehension fall apart.
Okay.
What that means is like one's confusion about relative and ultimate, or a relative and absolute truth being separate, falls apart in experience, meaning like it's just gone, right?
I want to go there.
Yeah.
Please.
No, that's honestly, really, this is really tough stuff. I decided to present. For me, this is challenging too. So what I want to say is like, if that's what comes out of this, that's amazing. Like, that's what I mean. When we study the Dharma, we want to long for this, because it's like, how do you put it? We might think that longing is like we're really far away, but we're really close. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm deluding myself or naive, but I think we're much closer than we think. And so that longing is so important. So thank you for sharing that. For me too, when I read this, I'm like, yes, but of course, as soon as we get off here, I'm going to get angry with someone. But that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is, yes, we know where we want to go. I'm not trying to be judgmental here. Look at the world. Most people have no idea where they want to go. Sure, maybe most of the time we don't have an idea, but we trust this. Because why? Because our Buddha nature is seeing the truth. When our own Buddha nature reflects the Dharma, we can kind of, we have a smell whether something is really talking about something profound or not. And we could see Lama Tsongkhapa here was on the right track. So then the fourth quote I took from him here. This is one that's quoted a lot. It's very beautiful. When you know that appearances dispel the extreme of existence, while the extreme of nothingness is eliminated by emptiness, and you also come to know how emptiness arises as cause and effect, then you will be immune to any view entailing clinging to extremes. Very beautiful, because this is, again, the reverse. It really is pointing at the realization beyond concept, because what it's pointing at is that, we could say like, okay, through meditating on emptiness, it helped to dissolve my anger towards, hitting my foot on the chair, right? And being angry at that, right? Something like that, silly like that. So then I could see meditating on emptiness. I'm not saying I see that, but one could see that as empty. And then yet there was like interdependence happening. So we're not denying that there's a foot that's hurting, just like there's a fire in your backyard right now. Emptiness is never going to deny that. It doesn't need to. There's no point. It's a relative truth that we have to respect, right? As long as we're in a human body. And so my point here is that now he's using the reverse. Now he's saying that through, when you know that appearances dispel the extreme of existence, that through stubbing your toe on the chair, it dispels the extreme of that existing truly. And well, the extreme of nothingness is eliminated by emptiness, because emptiness is dependent arising. So His Holiness Dalai Lama teaches all the time on this kind of thing, So some of you are probably familiar. But it's very beautiful to think of it that way, because now we know, even in our kind of like humble attempt to meditate on these things, at least in my experience, we can use both sides. We can use dependent origination to assert, not affirm, but infer and or connect with emptiness. We can use emptiness to not fall into nihilism, to also affirm dependent origination. So this is really when it starts to, again, I might be reaching here, but for me, this connected with this sense of form is emptiness, form is not other than emptiness. The inseparability affirmed as transcending all conceptual expression, right? So again, I look at this as progression when I look at these verses. And again, it might not be exactly like that, but the first couple are. So that's pretty much what I wanted to present. I did want to meditate on this, but I think it's better if we chat a little bit, because that was a lot of information and we don't have a lot of time. And really, you could see most of us really have to spend time on the meditation that we started with today, which is relating to form as emptiness, right? And again, don't take form literally. That could also be any of the aggregates existing in the body and mind, right? So basically, if we were to take, we just say, we meditate on body and mind as emptiness. And then we can meditate on emptiness as form, right? Dependent origination. So we kind of did that today too, towards the end. So maybe we did cover it already as practice. So yeah, just anything on your minds before we kind of wrap up this very short, and I feel rushed because I always try to fit too much in a series. Apologize for that. And again, it doesn't have to be anything from what just happened, just anything in your mind. The main thing to take away is relative and ultimate truth, relative absolute as emptiness and dependent origination, just simplifying this. That's really the essence of Prajnaparamita as a practice, right?
I have a somewhat unrelated question.
Go
At the
for it,
the beginning, you were saying how we have a perfect human rebirth, and I lead a Dharma care group through our center, and we were talking about perfect human rebirth because we're going through the Lam Rim basically, and I felt like we have a pretty close to perfect human rebirth, but not really a perfect human rebirth. Is that right? Can we just talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's defined by the 8 freedoms and 10 endowments in the Lam Rim.
Yeah.
So
I forgot
So,
what
we
the-
have to kind of like approach those in a modern way where like, one of them is like, not being born as a barbarian or something like that. And that just
Right.
really refers to like being born in a place where there's no dharma, where
Right.
like, but we all have internet. So like I kind of think like everywhere is now a dharma land kind of
That's
in the modern
true.
world because everyone has access to the internet. Well, not everyone, whoever has access to
Right.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was the big one. But then I thought, if you somehow got born into a culture where the Dharma is just sort of prolific, then, like, and you become a monk or a nun, that's sort of a perfect human rebirth. I mean, it may not be because they also have major issues.
They have borderlands in Tibet. They had it too. Like often the borderlands between India, like the jungles between India and Tibet and these places, you had like really wild tribes.
Uh-huh.
Like some were, what do you call it? Some are still there apparently. Cannibals.
Oh,
They
oh,
have
wow.
very intense shamanic traditions. And
Okay.
so, that are very different than Dharma. So no, you have this in existence in India and these places. So that's why they talk about it. But no, I think, yeah, of course it's ideal to be born into a Dharma culture, but it just means in a place where we can access Dharma. That's how I see it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And just to simplify it, I think of perfect human rebirth as having the freedom to practice the Dharma.
Right.
And that's basically what, and a faith in it. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. Anyone else? Sorry, my girlfriend's trying to check into an Airbnb I booked, so she's having problems with the owner because he's expecting me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes. Anything on your minds, practice-wise? I said a lot. So,
Yeah.
do any of you need sort of like more the Cliff Notes version, just kind of essentializing this? Would that be helpful? Yeah. So, I think the main thing here, and maybe this is good just to wrap up the teaching as a whole. Continue to. I would just say, just encourage you to keep studying this stuff. Like for me, I'm trying to get something fresh every time I read those lines from Lama Tsongkhapa. So even if it doesn't make any sense to you or sounds like Japanese, go back and read them again and again. Keep reading the Heart Sutra, even though it might not connect. And what that does is it creates the habituation, and it will connect at some point. And so that's really building the understanding. But on the practice side, I'll go back to something I said last week, which is just, we have to be really curious. And I think it's that spirit of curiosity and questioning without expectation that is also really in line with this. So in just very simple ways, looking back and asking, hey, who is it? Who is that? Who just, had that reaction? But don't try to get rid of your reaction. Because again, that's like going into the nihilism. Sometimes I think we meditate on emptiness expecting the anxiety to go away or the anger to go away. No, it doesn't need to go away, in my opinion. And it won't go away in the beginning. But I even have this doubt whether it needs to go away, because it's not the anger that's the problem. It's how we're relating to it. And so when we aim the meditation, whether we're on the cushion or off the cushion, at some type of curiosity or openness to the situation, we can kind of, sometimes there's a gap to see through without using a lot of, the kind of jargon I use, a gap to see through that. Okay, maybe it's not as it appears. So sometimes I just say that to myself. Maybe it's not as it appears, right? And then some kind of prompt to open a question to look. And it's the looking that really, I think, divides a armchair Buddhist from an actual Buddhist practitioner. It's the willingness and the perseverance to look. Do you know what I mean by look? Turn the awareness to look at the phenomena or the self, wherever it appears. And then slowly through the teaching here, you can apply more of this. But essentially, when we do things like the meditation we did in the beginning, we have to slowly go to the parts that are challenging for us and then drop the expectations. Just treat it as like an experiment. You know, we don't know what we're going to find, but we're just going to keep going. Right. So that's kind of my feeling, my experience, you know, over the years on this kind of stuff. And then, of course, through study, we get more clear. But the clarity without practice is kind of useless. It's a little bit beneficial, like it creates imprints in the mind. But I don't know. It's sort of like we sometimes can become worse. Have you ever met a scholar or something who's so arrogant? You know, it's really obnoxious, right? So whether we know a lot about emptiness or not, the point is to apply what we know, right? So yeah, whatever you got, even a little piece, try to apply it. And if you've been studying for a long time, just keep going. You know, for me, it's like there's so much that unfolds from all of this. So yeah, so maybe I'll leave it there. I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Sarah, you're muted.
I do have one question. Do you have time?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
How does all this relate to what the Dalai Lama says, just be kind, or kindness is my practice? How does
Yeah.
all this heady stuff relate to that simple submission of
Yeah, well, I
Buddhism?
mean, this heady stuff isn't meant to be heady. That was my point. Like, it gets heady to sort of point some of us towards the direction, but some of us don't need this heady stuff. We maybe need more of a direct approach or using an analogy. But to answer your question, genuine kindness, of course, like just on a very human level, is something just innate. It's not something we need philosophy to enact. We know we have a measure or like a thermometer for what's kind and what's not. But according to the Buddhist perspective, when there's confusion and a misperception of reality, there's always a chance of being unkind because we get confused. We get confused about what's right, what's wrong, what is the sort of skillful way to act. And we sometimes end up acting unskillfully. So from a Buddhist perspective, if we truly want to be kind in a we could say in like a much grander, fuller way, we need to realize emptiness. Because what that does is it cuts through all of our misperceptions that the world revolves around us. And when we cut through that perception of ego clinging, that the world revolves around me, there's nothing to do but be kind. And there's no doer of being kind. So I'll say something a little controversial, if that's okay, but my crappy opinion. Being kind is great, but sometimes it's a little bit snooty. You see what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm kind, I'm the giver. There's so much ego behind that. From a Buddhist perspective, that's not kindness. But of course, on a relative, just human, secular level, which I think the Dalai Lama is alluding to there, we have to even strive for that. But as a Buddhist, we're not just striving for that. We're trying to go beyond an ego, a me that's being kind, because then the real kindness can come out. The real altruism, which has no doer. And this is a little tough to understand, but it's like,
Yeah.
You get it? Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. So, but what, I will say one last thing. I think as a Buddhist practitioner, if we don't have the first one, real difficult to get to the second one. So that's really important. So what you're pointing out is really nice, which is just like basic human decency and kindness is super important, because even with that, we loosen the ego a little bit. We loosen the ego clinging. But until we go beyond the ego clinging, we're still going to be stuck in sort of like guessing who deserves my compassion, the Republicans or the Democrats. See? So I'm just stating one thing, but you see what I'm saying? It's like there's always a dualistic, this person deserves my compassion than the other person. And so until we realize emptiness, the compassion doesn't become boundless, and therefore the kindness doesn't become boundless. So super good question. That's why I wanted to say a little more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, I probably gotta go, but yeah, if it's fast, yeah. Mary Jo, I think, but you have your mic, you're muted. I think you're muted.
Mary Jo's always muted.
True.
I'm supposed to call someone. Let me just message them.
Oh, now she's okay.
She there? Oh, there you go. You can ask Mary. I'm listening.
So when we do notice that our kindness is not to all people, then what do we do about that?
Awesome. Excellent question. We're kind of stuck with this, Mary Jo. You know, this is kind of the problem. This is our predicament. I mean, we're stuck with it for a while, but aspiration, and especially like as kind of like, you know, more traditional Buddhist practitioners, aspiration through the four immeasurables. Right. So the four immeasurables: may all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering its causes. May they never be free from the may they never be free from the joy, free from sorrow. May they abide in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and indifference. So this is very powerful stuff. Aspiration. For me, it's like it took me 15 years in Buddhism to realize how powerful aspiration practice is in Buddhism. Really tough one for me. So powerful. So yeah, aspiration. And then it's also our nature. I think the kind of like, we could call it the dualistic kindness I was referring to. This also comes out of our nature. It just is a little bit confused about the object, right? Who's deserving, who's not. Mm-hmm. So this is one of, you know, Mary Jo, I really like this question because I think about it a lot. And I really also like to reflect on this personally as a way to develop renunciation mind, more longing to attain enlightenment. Because it's like, wow, I can't do that. I'm judging all the time who's worthy of my love and who's not worthy. What a pity. And not like I'm bad. We don't have to think of it like I'm unworthy or I'm bad practitioner. No. That's the wrong direction. We have to long for enlightenment, right? Yeah. So we think, wow, it's not in my capacity right now. I need to connect with that. So again, aspiration.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Maybe we could dedicate the merit. I really appreciate you all. I wish we had more time to banter. I should have stopped earlier. I got caught up. Lama Tsongkhapa gets me caught up all the time. So let's just do it in English, if that's okay. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your love and concern for us and intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please live long. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and just wishing you guys all the best in your study and practice, as always.
Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate you coming. You're being here for
Wonderful
us.
class. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you all. Lots of love.